So today I'm going to do a video on why homosexuality is a sin. It's going to be a very controversial video, but it needs to be said. And for one thing, I don't care about this world. Do whatever you want with it. Okay, I just know if you allow homosexuality, it's going to cause a whole lot more suffering. It's going to cause a whole lot of gross things to happen, as are already happening. But I don't care what you do with this world. I'm just interested in saving souls. So if you are going to be a Christian, you cannot be gay. You cannot be queer. You cannot be any weird acronym that comes on that LGBTQ spectrum. Okay, so here's the fact. Homosexuality, it's a corruption of the human nature. It says this throughout the scriptures, and it says this in the apostolic fathers. So it is established in Christianity that it is a corruption of nature, which you're not allowed to do. And it's also named specifically in the Pauline epistles that this is a sin. This is arsenokonoite, which means man bedding, which means man inseminating a man. And in Romans chapter 1, it says even the women give up their natural desires for that which is unseemly. So it is a sin, and the reason why it's a sin is because it corrupts the world. It makes people unable to know right from wrong. I have never had a discussion with a homosexual in my entire life where they understood good from evil. They've sometimes flat out rejected that there's good, and sometimes if they don't do that, they think homosexuality is good, which it gives you a good feeling. I know that there's a good feeling attached to it. I can see it with the Paris Olympics. But if you can just take that good feeling and see the Paris Olympics, the opening ceremony, how just grotesque it is. It's a good example of why it's wrong. There's children in that ceremony watching it. There's half-naked people in beastly attire and grossly dressed in strange apparel and in all different kinds of confusing gender ways. Like they have women with beards, which is like, not to say that women can't have beards, but if it's a man with a penis or even a penis that got cut off and they have a beard, it's very confusing. And this is not according to the natural way that there is male and female. And the unfortunate fact is that if you don't have these two categories, you destroy categories in general, and human understanding works through categorization. This is how language works, and you can't have fundamentally any kind of coherent communication without categories. This is what Plato's forms are all about, is the way we understand things and formal elements that help us group things together and understand them. And if we don't have that understanding, which homosexuality fundamentally undermines that, because it just attacks the root and the first principles which every child learns, which is mommy and daddy love each other, and boys are boys and girls are girls. Those are the two first things everybody learns. And if they don't learn that, they can't ever have proper categorizations for things, which leads to problems in communication, which leads to problems in morality and ethics, where there can't be a grounding in any of it. Not to mention, psychologically, the animus and anima are the deepest psychological subconscious drives, or even further back than the shadow. And being behind the shadow, this is in Jungian psychology, bringing that out into the persona or the ego, it drives the aggression of the shadow and also the aggression of the anima and animus into the ego, which means that these people have higher levels of aggression, which is obviously true. So it creates moral failings too, where people become more narcissistic, they become more greedy, they become more, just all sorts of bad behavior becomes acceptable, they become violent, extremist, and you can see it in their ways. Like Christianity, for the most part, the last, say, 100 years, we've kind of tolerated this, and we're not, for most of Christian history, actually, it's never really been the case that Christians really persecuted gays, but some cases they did, but it's always been considered a sin. And also, this will get into the next thing. So we had from about 300 AD to about 1100 AD what was called the Pax Christiana, which was the ideal Christian society, which you see around 1100 AD. There's a friar named Alan of Lille who's seeing that homosexuality is being practiced by the people, and this is why it's an abomination, is that it's being practiced. And then you see from 1100 to about 1700 the complete and total catastrophic failure of Western civilization. That is the Dark Ages. The Renaissance is a part of that. It was one of the worst times in history to be alive. You had all sorts of persecution and and destruction and killing and violence, and it's rooted in the fact that the basic principles of sexuality are confused, and that just leads to all sorts of problems and chaos, which you see in every civilization in history, be it Rome or Greece or Japan or the Americas or China. Every time this becomes acceptable, it starts silly conversations, people don't know right from wrong, and then it just leads to violence and chaos and war and pestilence and famine, and it just does those things because it's unnatural. Now, maybe God built the world that way that this can't be. You know, you see in geometry that things exist as they are. They fundamentally work together in that way, and human psychology is like geometry, that it's fitted for a certain pattern, and if it's aberrant of that pattern, it creates a whole mess of problems, which we've been seeing for 30 years. We've been seeing these problems, and they've been manifesting in the art, and they've been manifesting in people's egos. They've been making people more aggressive, and you can see in our art the deterioration of the society's ethics alongside with this acceptance of homosexuality. And you see people getting more aggressive and getting more corrupt, and they're not doing what they should do. So I don't hate gay people. I actually had a teacher who was gay. I loved her dearly, and when she asked me a question, she said, do I think gays are pedophiles? I said, no, I don't think gays are pedophiles. That's not why I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong because it just drives a lot of bad subconscious material into the open, and it creates sociological problems at that, where like another thing is that like apportionment, if you take away 4% of the population as acceptable mates, it just frustrates the other 96%, and because it just makes having what you want. Everybody has libido, everybody has eros, everybody has desire. They want a family. That's people want to procreate, and if you eliminate that, it causes frustration. In fact, even 4% of the population, which is about how many gays there are in the population right now, which that number is likely to go up as it becomes increasingly more acceptable, and that causes frustration, and that frustration is the root cause of all of humanity's woes. So there's a lot of reasons why it's wrong and a sin, and hopefully I articulated it the best way I could. And again, this isn't me saying I hate gays. This isn't an attack on them. It's just a simple reminder that like you can do whatever you want with the world, but if you want to be saved, these are the reasons why it's a sin.